Hey, 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 Tav into the Out of This World story from our space. My ex-girlfriend thought she would humiliate me by cheating on me, but I turned the tables by humiliating her instead. The story has gotten me a lot of flack among my friends, but to be honest, I don't regret a thing. If I had to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't date her, but if I did, I would do the same thing all over again. I grew up in a local town where my parents were one of the well-off citizens in town. We were an old family, and our family tree can be traced as far back as the founding of the town. My parents were people conscious about the growth of the town, so they were on a lot of city boards and did a lot of welfare programs. This made me and my sister enjoy some sort of celebrity status in town. I didn't notice it at first because I grew up with that kind of thing, but my parents worried about stuff like that getting into our heads, so they sent us to school outside of town. That was where I knew that we had been treated differently. I didn't mind the new anonymity because it gave me the chance to pursue teenage mischiefs without worrying about the image I was projecting. I didn't do anything wild either. The extent of my misdeeds was egging my history teacher's house on Halloween with some of the other kids, or sneaking to buy porn mags from the adult store. But all that stopped when I became a senior. I met Paige, a stunning girl that every guy in my school had a crush on. I did too, even though I pretended not to. Lucky for me, she became a seat partner in one of my classes and I got the chance to talk to her in class. We became pretty close that the entire school thought we were dating, but we weren't. We graduated, and because I didn't have the guts to pursue her, we went our separate ways. I went back home to my parents, and soon after, I forgot about her in the manner that you forget about the girl you liked first. I went to college, partied hard, graduated with honors, and got a job at an advertising firm. I was making good money, given the fact that I didn't really have student loans to settle because my parents paid my way through. They also gifted me with an apartment fully paid in their name when I got a job to show how much they were proud of me. I admit, I let these things get into my head, so I squandered my money on drinks and girls. And that was when I met Laura. She was just one of the girls I liked to hook up with, but she had this vulnerable side to her that you couldn't help but feel like you wanted to protect her. And that was exactly what I tried to do. She had an issue with some guys in her neighborhood. I helped her move to a better one, with a little monetary help. She was grateful as she seemed like a proud woman, so I tried not to make a big deal out of it. We spent more time together, I discovered so many things about her, and I gradually started developing feelings for her. I bought her gifts and took her on dates. I even tried paying some of her bills. The thing is, to an outsider, it probably seems like I was throwing my money around to get her attention, but I have never been able to watch someone suffer where I could help. I would have, and have done, the same for other people too. You could even say that my love language is giving gifts. So I wasn't throwing my money around, I was just trying to express how much I cared about her. We got so close that somehow I stopped focusing on other girls and my other vices without even realizing it. When I admitted how I felt to her, she had some misgivings, which at the time, I thought didn't mean anything. I tried to convince her that it wouldn't matter and we would resolve it. I didn't have to ask her to officially become a girlfriend. It just happened. Just like I didn't ask her to move in with me. It also just happened. She came over one day to spend the night and never returned to her apartment after that. But it was after she moved in that I discovered some unflattering things about her, like her being a slob and extremely lazy. She was also a flirt, but I knew she didn't mean it. It was just one of those things for her. I made allowances for her vices because I knew I loved her, and I knew that loving meant you had to love them, bad habits and all. Besides, I knew I had my bad habits too. She complained about me spending too much, and I tried to fix up. I got my sister to manage my finances in an official capacity, she's an accountant, and reduce my spending. I believe that knowing you have vices shouldn't be an excuse to not change or improve. I genuinely listened to all her feedback and tried to change, but whenever I tried to ask her to change her ways, she became defensive and complained that I was being too judgmental and that I didn't know what she had gone through for her to be the way she was. I didn't allow it to stop me from still asking her to change. I even offered to pay for therapy sessions so she could work through her issues, but she accused me of trying to throw my money around again. At this point, she was working a minimum wage job and was barely contributing to our living expenses. I did all the housework too, and she made it harder for me because of her sloppiness. She didn't cook, and she liked having us eat at expensive places even though the tab was going to be covered by meat. Then I discovered texts between her and her coworker. They had an emotional connection that seemed to even rival our closeness. That was where I drew the line. I loved her, but I wasn't going to share her with another man, even if they weren't having sex. I broke it off with her right there and then. We had a screaming match before she packed up her stuff and left the apartment. The next day, I regretted sending her away, but there was nothing I could do again at that point. I spent the next 6 months alone, picking celibacy over meaningless flings. I met her again at a restaurant almost a year after that, and the sparks between us ignited again. Only this time, it was better than what we had before. I apologized for going off on her, as she apologized for making me doubt her feelings. We slowly started another relationship. She had worked on her vices, and she seemed like a better person overall. She was still working the same minimum wage job, but she was more responsible than she was before. I was also more patient than I was before. We were both in better places than we were when we broke up. The relationship sailed smoothly, and there was no room for doubt again. We had a policy where both of us had access to each other's phones. I won't lie, a part of me doubted her at first, so I checked her phone every opportunity I got, but there was nothing, so I stopped checking. When COVID lockdown happened, I asked her to move back in with me so we wouldn't be apart from each other. She wasn't quite as reliant on me as the first time we had dated, and I told her I was so proud of her. Not quite long after she moved in with me, she lost her job. Unlike before, she didn't leave everything to me. She cleaned around the house and cooked for the both of us. Then, when the lockdown was lifted, she tried looking for another job, but she had only certain skills and could only find part-time jobs. She wanted to get another part-time job, but I asked her not to because of the stress. At this time, we were already thinking about getting serious. I was thinking about proposing, and I was already making little noises about us getting married. She seemed like she wanted to get married to me, too. For some reason, I was not so quick to propose because I had cold feet. But at that point, it appeared like I wasn't the only one getting cold feet. Laura would suddenly turn cold and withdraw affection from me. Whenever I asked her what was wrong, she claimed nothing was wrong, but she still continued to withdraw from me. My plan of proposing was placed on hold because I was scared of rejection. She also became secretive. She would be gone from the house for hours, and when I asked her where she had been, she would lie unconvincingly. I started suspecting that she was probably cheating, but when I checked her phone, I found no evidence. Her messages read normal, and there weren't any suspiciously clear chats or anything. But even though I had no proof that she was cheating, I was convinced that something was wrong. I offered for us to attend couples therapy, and she declined at first. But when it seemed like I was also drifting away from her, she agreed to it. We had a few sessions of therapy together before we started noticing results. Later, she explained that she had been looking for a full-time job that wasn't minimum wage again, and the stress was getting to her. I told her that she could quit her job and be reliant on me just until she got another job. I explained to her that it wasn't like I was going to leave her needs unmet just because she had no job. She didn't agree with me. She told me it felt like being fully dependent on me would rob her of her independence. My intention for her was never to clip her wings. I wanted her to enjoy the finer things in life without having to bother about cost. That was the kind of life my father had given my mother and us. I intended to do the same thing with the woman I love, but not at the expense of her freedom. I told her that I would assist her in any way that I could. I checked over her applications, adjusted spelling errors, paid for her professional certifications so her resume would look great to recruiters, and sent job vacancies her way whenever I saw them. If she got a call back from any of the places she applied to, I made sure to drive her down and pick her up after interviews. She eventually got a job. It was a part-time job, and she didn't want to take the job at first, but the perks outweighed the type of job, so she took it. There was also the added advantage that she could make a full-time staff if one of the existing full-time staff left. The first few months after she got a job made it seem like we were back on track. Then, she started coming home later than usual. She explained that one of her full-time coworkers had gotten ill, so she was covering for him. I had no reason not to believe her. She kept forgetting plans we made and would arrive late whenever we had a date. As if that wasn't bad enough, she was withdrawing affection from me again. She stopped initiating hugs and sex. She also kept making excuses whenever I tried to initiate sex too. Then, out of the blue, she would love bomb me. It was later that I got to know that it was love bombing. Love bombing is a technique often used by narcissists to manipulate their partners. In any case, it was multiple displays of affection, trying extremely hard to please me even if it meant going out of their way to do certain things. When I felt like things were back to normal again, she would withdraw away from me, starting the cycle all over. I attributed it to work stress, since she was covering for her coworker more and more. I thought that things would get better if she could get the full-time position, and I even encouraged her to continue her shifts. It was during one of her stages of withdrawal that I ran into Paige, my former crush from high school. We met when I went on a grocery run at the store, and she recognized me first. We caught up a bit and exchanged numbers so we could catch up some other time. As promised, I hung out with Paige again and introduced her back to the rest of the gang from high school. She explained that she had just gotten a job in town and that she would be starting that same week. I promised to show her around town with my girlfriend. She agreed, and I made plans for a picnic the next weekend. When I got home, I told my girlfriend all about how I ran into my friend from high school and how Paige was my crush, but I never acted on it. She didn't seem jealous, and she agreed to go picnicking with her the next weekend. However, she backed out last minute and told me to go ahead without her. I guess it was her way of trying to justify her cheating on me. that if she pushed me into situations where I'd get emotionally attached to another woman, then she'd have no problem continuing cheating. But it didn't work. I only saw Paige as my friend. I didn't go out of my way to talk or hang out with her, and when we hung out, it was usually with other friends. I tried to get my girlfriend and Paige to meet, but it didn't work out. I would make plans and Laura would bail so the meetings wouldn't happen. So I never got around to making introductions until Laura and I ran into Paige by accident one evening. It was a date that had gone well, and Laura seemed like old self again. When I saw Paige, I raised my hand and waved her over. It turned out that Paige and Laura worked in the same place, and Paige was Laura's boss. I noticed that both women seemed cold to each other, but I thought it was because Paige was trying to be polite. I knew for a fact that Paige's politeness often came across as rude to people, and that Laura was probably reacting to the rudeness. Paige went on her way, and I went home with my girlfriend. When we got home, Laura and I got into a fight because of Paige. She accused me of trying to undermine her at work by befriending her boss, and that it was more than enough that my father had helped her get the job, and I was now friends with her new boss. I was really hurt at her accusations, which weren't true in the least, so I left the house. I crashed at one of my friends that night. The next morning, when I returned home, she seemed to have calmed down and even made me breakfast. Then, when she asked where I spent the night, and I told her one of my friends, she seemed disappointed. She tried to get me to confess that I had spent the night at Paige's, but I hadn't, and I couldn't admit to what I hadn't done. I told her to grow up if she thought I would head to another woman's house after I had a fight with her, and that I was very disappointed with the way she was thinking. She apologized and we made up again, but I noticed she became a little bit anxious and would ask if I had met with Paige in her absence. The answer was always no because I didn't have time. I thought that she was mentioning Paige a lot more because of her jealousy, which was unfounded. When I had plans to meet with a couple of friends and I knew that Paige was going to be there, I mentioned it to my girlfriend and she instantly decided to tag along. At the gathering, Laura made sure to stick closely to me so nobody had the chance to speak with me without her being there. I thought she acted like that because she was marking her territory. It went on like that for a while. She would always tag along whenever I told her that Paige was going to be there. I asked her if she would let me to stop talking to Paige, but she said no. Then one day, Paige asked to meet with me. I was at work and I decided to drop by her place on my way home. I didn't tell Laura because I figured that I would just tell her when I got home. When I got to Paige's place, she looked sad and angry. She told me that I probably wasn't going to believe her, but that Laura was cheating on me with some guy at work, that everyone at work knew they were screwing, and nobody knew that she had a boyfriend. I didn't believe Paige, so I told her that I got it, and that I would be going home. On the drive home, I thought maybe Paige was lying, or maybe she had misunderstood what their relationship was. I didn't want to believe it, but a part of me knew that it was the truth. When I got home, I pretended like I wanted to install a new update on her phone like I do periodically, and used the opportunity to go through her phone again. This time, I decided to go through her emails and Snapchat. Her mails held conclusive proof, and it was ingenious because I wouldn't have thought to check through her work emails. The work guy wasn't the only one, even though they had been cheating for a long time, almost immediately after she started working there. There were also others that as far back as immediately after lockdown. I was absolutely crushed. I texted Paige to let her know that she was right and that I was sorry for not trusting her. I couldn't sleep that night because she was right next to me, and all I wondered was why she had cheated. By morning, I could tell myself that no matter why she cheated, it wasn't because of me. I decided to get back at her and humiliate her the way she had humiliated me in my absence. I met with Paige again and asked her to help me plan my revenge. She didn't like my plan, but she still decided to go ahead with it. What I did was pretend to plan an engagement party. I let snippets of my plans leak to her when I was in her presence. I kept the engagement ring I bought where I knew she would find it. She became more excited and would randomly just giggle. When it was near D-Day, I suggested that she get a manicure. She went ahead to get the manicure and even bought a new dress. I didn't let her know anything until D-Day. I asked Paige to help invite her work lover and a few of her other work colleagues. On D-Day, I told her I wanted to go and hang out with some of my friends and asked if she wanted to come. The jacket I was wearing had a bulge, but I pretended not to notice. She went to get dressed and even applied makeup. We drove to the restaurant in silence. When we got there, everyone I invited was already there, including her work lover. She didn't notice him because she was clinging to me. Halfway through the meal, the banner I asked to be made dropped and the lights dimmed. The waiters brought champagne, and after they poured some in a glass, I asked to make a toast. Everyone's attention was on me, including the other customers sitting in the restaurant. Today was supposed to be the beginning of the rest of my life with a wonderful and beautiful woman. But I found out recently that you can never really know a person's true heart unless they share it with you. Today, in front of everyone seated here, I'm going to ask the one woman that I know will always have my back to spend the rest of her life with me. Paige, darling, will you marry me? The restaurant exploded with surprise. Lori yelled at me, and I didn't hesitate to ask her if she could deny cheating on me with her lovers, who were also seated at the table. I told her that I didn't want to have anything to do with her again and that she should get her stuff out of my apartment before I returned home. The story went viral and a blog even carried it. They splashed pictures of her, which I was more than happy to supply, everywhere. She couldn't stand the shame, so she quit her job and left town. I haven't heard from her since then, and I sincerely hope that she is living miserably wherever she is. Update. Today I got married to Paige. The past 6 months have been filled with joy because of her, and I wish I had gotten to experience love with her sooner. Since I already proposed, we decided to elope to Vegas 2 days ago, and now we are married. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with her.